Great, thanks, Sherry. I'll start off just by introducing myself. My name is Sam Ervin, and I'm a Scrum Master slash team coach at Scaled Agile. Depends on the day, depends on my mood, what I call myself. But I want to thank you all for showing up today. Thanks for having me for this talk. This is my first time doing a meetup on this topic. So, as Adele would say, go easy on me. Um, but the topic at hand is funny business, humor in the workplace. I gave you a question a few minutes ago before we started recording. I want you to think about your response to this question because we're going to come back to it in a few minutes. um, I want you to think about comedians that you've seen on Netflix or maybe on stage or on YouTube, or maybe a funny movie that you find really relatable. I want you to think about comedians, humor that you relate to, that you really love, and consider what are the reasons why you find that humor relatable. So just ponder that for a minute. I'll give you a chance. We'll go into breakout rooms in a little bit and we'll let you exchange your responses to that question. But I want to start off with a story. I want to tell you about a recent moment at work. Naturally, this is a talk about comedy, so it was a funny moment. But it was a little teeny tiny funny moment. And I think it had a big impact, which is why I want to share it with you. I was in a meeting giving a presentation to some senior business leaders. So no pressure. And I wouldn't say that it was going terribly, but it wasn't exactly going extremely well. It was a little tense. There's a lot of disagreement in the room. And I don't do extremely well with that. I know we're supposed to be like very good with feedback and navigating conflict, but at the end of the day, full transparency, I struggle in that ambiguous space of like, is this going well or is this not going well? And I know where this comes from. The root of that discomfort is in my own childhood. When I think back to like coming home from kindergarten art class with some crappy drawing, that I bring to my parents. I'm like, I made this for you. And, it's just some snowman or something I've drawn. And my parents treat it as if it's like God's gift to humanity. They're like, wow, Sam, this is the most amazing snowman I've ever seen. Look at the attention to detail, and the color scheme is spectacular. And the little carrot nose is fantastic. Right. So of course that makes me feel great. And they take it and they hang it on the refrigerator, like the shrine to their son, all of my kindergarten crappy drawings. And they're like, every time we go to the refrigerator to take out the milk, we're going to think of you and how much we love you. So I began to associate my own accomplishments, my own hard work with love and acceptance. And then that gets, reinforced all throughout adolescence. And I condition myself to think that way, that if I work really hard and show up really prepared, I'm going to get a big pat on the back. The world of work is not so kind, right? So I show up to this meeting with these senior business leaders, and I'm thinking like, look at this thing that I worked so hard on. In my mind, they're like my parents. Don't you love this? Don't you love this snowman? Like what I was expecting it to be more like, we this attention to detail, Sam. It's so good. Your color scheme in this presentation is amazing. The little carrot nose is just fantastic. That's ridiculous. Of course, that's not how things went. I still look at the refrigerator in the office, like maybe one day somebody will print out my slides and hang them on the refrigerator. Think about, oh, Sam, he's so smart. That's not how it went. So needless to say, I struggled a bit with negotiating this like tension in the room and uncertainty about how this meeting was going. It was fine. I just had to work on like calming myself down. And one of the senior business leaders did something that I absolutely love. I love when people use anecdotes or metaphors to articulate or express themselves. And comedians do this all the time. You'll hear them, they'll give you a premise. They'll start with like, what's happening in the news? What are the headlines? And then they connect it to something completely unrelated. And that makes it, they'll say, blah, blah, blah. It's as if blah, blah, blah. Well, the senior business leader was trying to make the point that we claim to be innovative and value doing things differently, trying new things. But he was looking at this presentation and he said, we're just doing the same thing over and over. We're just rinsing and repeating. And he said, it's as if we are AOL in the 1990s. You guys know AOL, America Online, hopefully. Okay. And when they first started sending these CDs in the mail, you go out to your mailbox and you're like, oh, a free CD from America Online. It's like the internet in an envelope. You get excited. But there came a point in time where we had all moved on from AOL. We had found other options. And they just kept sending us these CDs. So you going out to your mailbox and you're like, oh, it's another America Online CD. You just add it to the pile of America Online CDs. And that was his point, is he was like, we're just doing the same thing and not innovating. He wasn't trying to be funny, but in that moment, I saw an opening. I saw an opportunity. I took it. We were using a virtual collaboration board to list our brainstorm of ideas. And at the very top of the list, I added a new idea. I didn't say anything. I just typed on the board and I said, annual compact disc in the mail. I was like, look, there's our best idea at the top. And I was looking at the faces of the other people in the meeting. We're all virtual. And I see some people start to smile. I noticed some chuckles. And the senior leader, who was like going on and on with his frustration, like, we're not innovating enough. Eventually he sees it as well. He gives a big old eye roll, like the biggest eye roll you can imagine. And then he smiles. We all acknowledge his point. And we end up moving through, making it through the meeting, finding the consensus and confidence that we needed to move forward. The point of me telling you all of this is I would not claim that we completely changed the trajectory of our business that day. But what I think that little prank, that little moment of comedy did was cut through the tension. For me, it helped me to remove myself sort of from the situation and remember that we're not making life or death decisions, and not in that meeting on that particular day. So everything was going to be fine. And it helped me to stay calm and to think clearly and to breathe. And my hypothesis is that that is a contagious thing that has a ripple effect, and that when I can stay calm, cool, and collected, then other people can do that as well. So that's really the essence of this talk today, is bringing humor into the workplace, having some fun, trying to be funny, is not always all about wielding a microphone and cracking jokes. It's really about finding those tiny moments of joy that just makes work a better place to be. And I believe that when it's a better place to be, we all think better, we work better, and it has a direct impact on the bottom line if that's what you really care about. So has anyone here, I'm just curious, ever been to an improv performance, like improv theater? Feel free to come off mute and say, I have. What was it like? I'm just curious. What do you remember about it? Yeah, go ahead, Sherry.
Oh, me?
Yeah, sorry, I thought you were raising your hand to share.
I did. I mean, I've been to an improv thing, and I will say it was very different when I was a teenager learning about improv, and then being an adult going back to improv and feeling like that teenager again.
Oh, that's fascinating. That like childlike wonder and thinking like a kid. Okay. And what was the experience like? You're in the theater, like how does it go? Just mechanically, what is the experience like?
My takeaway from just doing that first class was how much synergy really plays a part in working well with people. You have to be around them enough to kind of like understand their waves and their humor, or like, oh, I see what you're doing there, and then you're jumping in. So that's been my kind of experience. So as teenagers, you know, we have all these little inside jokes and things like that. And if you go to a class with perfect strangers, much like how we're sitting there with our teams, our team members, it might be a new team. They're perfect strangers to us. So how do we get to know each other?
Nice. Oh, that's good. There's so many things in there that I want to come back to. Yolanda, you have your hand raised. Do you have experience? Tell us about improv you've seen.
Yeah, I think the actors complement each other, like follow the same. One starts with something and the other one continues, and it's kind of contagious. That's what I have observed.
Yes, yes, I love that. The contagious part of it. Okay, so my goal today, I just want to set expectations with everybody. There are no slides, as you can see. It's just me standing here. My goal is to run this sort of like an improvisational theater where you are invited to participate. I've got some questions, I've got some prompts and some activities. And I like how you just put it, how we're working together. We're going to try and find that synergy. So I'm going to be looking for you to come off of mute and to speak up. If you're totally uncomfortable with that, there's no pressure. I'm not going to call on you. Nobody's going to have to do anything crazy. But all that to say, I think there's a lot of space for us to share the stage today. Okay, I'm checking my notes. What have I missed? I'm assuming everybody here probably falls into one of two categories, and I want to tell you what's in it for both of these categories. So you might fall into the camp of, I'm very comfortable with humor. I like making jokes at work, or I'm all about it. You don't have to convince me. And that's great. What I hope that you can get out of this is just understanding what makes it work when it works. Because we all know it doesn't always work. But understanding the why behind the humor. So I want to explore some of the ideas behind the science of being funny, and then helping you hone your craft. What are some skills that you could try to get better at bringing humor into the workplace? The other group might be people who are like, the thought of saying something funny and it falling flat makes you want to crawl in a hole and never come out again. Like, that just sounds terrifying. And to you, I say, take a deep breath. That's okay. And what you can get out of the session is understanding, we've already heard so many reasons why having fun at work is so important. I would say it's not just a nice to have or a bonus. I would say it's actually crucial to have. And then how you get started opening up and finding your comedic voice. So that's what I've got for you today. I'm super excited about this. Let's dive in and get started. Okay, so I gave you a prompt a few minutes ago to think about your favorite comedian and why, or your favorite funny movie and why. I'd like to ask Sherry if we can set up some breakout rooms with like 3 or 4 people in a room. And I want to give you 5 minutes to get with your small group and give everybody a chance to share who's your favorite comedian and why do you find that humor relatable. And if you have extra time, then you can just explore that topic a little bit deeper, and then we'll go from there. Had a chance just to get together in a small group and share in a little more detail about your favorite comedian and why you find them relatable. So that icebreaker was actually the first big benefit of humor in the workplace that I wanted to start with, which is bonding. We just got a chance to practice it and experience it. We know that Agile teams, I'm sure many of you have heard of the 5 dysfunctions. The foundational dysfunction, one of the most important foundations of a team becoming a high-performing team, is having trust. I believe that psychological safety and trust are enablers for humor in the workplace. If you don't have that, it's kind of hard to open up and take some risks and have some fun. So I think that is sort of a precursor, but then there's kind of this like infinity loop between humor and trust, in that as you explore, as you're able to open up and have fun with a group and explore your sense of humor, that sort of contributes back to establishing psychological safety and trust. So the two go hand in hand. That's why earlier I said, it's not just a nice to have or a bonus, having humor at work. It's really something that's crucial. It's really vital. I think you probably see this with the teams that you've been on, or that you've maybe teams you've coached or observed, is whether you're at a happy hour or dinner or a conference, or even when you are at work doing work together, when the team is cracking jokes, and they have inside jokes and they're laughing together and they're creating those moments of connection. When I see that, I immediately think that team works really well together. They get it, they gel. And naturally, if that's missing, if that's lacking, if there's always tension and no one's cracking up with each other, that is probably a signal that something important might be missing, that trust might be missing. Okay, so that's like number one benefit to humor in the workplace is just bonding. Number one skill, a good starting point, we talk about building skills around humor, is to know your audience. So skill number one I want to talk about is know your audience. I want to tell you a story about why this is really important. Did a very highly scientific study on telling jokes. That's sarcasm. It was not scientific, but I did tell the same. I used the exact same comedic content for two different audiences, and in one case it landed. People loved it, like huge hit. In the other case, it flopped, and it's all because it all came down to the audience. Jokes were the same, audience was different. The first example was we had a planning event. I'm going to admit this person into the room. There we go. We had a planning event and we themed it on, it was like an award show, like the Oscars. And I love watching the Oscars, and you have, the host, like Ellen DeGeneres or somebody will stand up in the beginning and give like a 10-minute monologue where they greet people and poke fun at the audience and tell jokes. So that's what I did for this planning event. And I mean, the people in the room were my coworkers. It was a group of maybe 60 or 70, and we knew each other really well. We had bonded. I felt very comfortable. I had the safety to like take some risks with some jokes. And I did this whole bit about we were exploring building a new app. And I was like, okay, how can I connect that real thing that we're doing with something silly and ridiculous? I'm a millennial. I was like, dating apps, of course. So I started doing this whole bit about, we should have like Scrum Master seeking Scrum Master, and I need a Kanban board so I can like visualize what stage all of my potential dates are in, and had some like testy comments. But they loved it. Like, I mean, people were like, this is hilarious. Fast forward several years later, and I was invited to do an introduction at a conference. This was recent. And I kind of rushed the preparation, and I thought, I have that old content that people loved. Why don't I just use that again? So I brought in some stuff about dating apps into this introduction. Oh man, it did not work. I was expecting, the raucous applause and people being like, oh, that's so funny, hilarious. So, but I would deliver a punchline, and then it was like crickets, which is terrifying. And I realized, thinking back on it, that the people in the room, like that was not the right, they were not the generation who was using dating apps, and like the setup didn't make sense because we were at a conference. Like, it was just all off. So skill number one is to know your audience. How do you do that? You spend time with people. A good starting point is the people you work more closely with. I imagine you know this from experience, like your teams, your colleagues who you interact with on a daily basis, it's a little easier to cut up and be silly and have some fun. The further away you go from your safe circle, the harder it gets maybe to do that. But the key here is just knowing your audience. I've got some more stories I can share in a little bit. But I told you that the terrifying part of telling jokes and them not landing, and I don't want to leave you there. Because there's a silver lining to that. In the moment, I was like, oh, my stomach just like fell through, and I was like, I can't believe these jokes didn't work. It's so embarrassing, and I was really beating myself up. But throughout the day, people were coming up and introducing themselves and saying, thank you so much for kicking the day off. Like, that was fun. Maybe not that funny, but it was fun. And if there were to be a humor manifesto, this is an Agile meetup, I have to make it a manifesto. The first line would be appropriateness over laughter. So while we value the things on the right, we value the things on the left more. Obviously, if you're trying to have fun and make people laugh, it's great when they laugh. But if they don't laugh, you're doing great as long as your humor is appropriate. So that experience at the conference is I realized nobody had paid a ticket to come to a stand-up show. So that was not the expectation. The bar for humor at work is like very low. It's like off the camera low. They were just grateful that I tried. So the very first thing I would say, I've already said a lot of things. I don't even know which thing I'm on now. But if having the courage to try is just recognizing that people are grateful when you make an attempt, as long as it's appropriate. So appropriateness over laughter. Okay. Second big benefit. We had bonding. The second one has to do with balance, bonding and then balance. Work is hard, work is heavy, right? I don't know what everybody here does. I heard somebody works in healthcare. Where I work, lives are not at stake, but livelihoods are at stake. So naturally, when you're at work, you're making hard decisions, you're solving hard problems, and we don't need to make that any more difficult than it is automatically. There's some weight to what we do at work. And bringing a mindset of levity helps to balance that out. So I would say the second big benefit is creating that sense of balance. I gave you a couple of examples of comedic moments, like pranking a senior leader in a meeting, or delivering a little stand-up bit at a planning meeting. But I'm curious, what examples can you think of? Take yourself off mute and just shout them out. What are some places where you've seen comedy show up, or not even comedy, just humor, just levity? What are some places where you've seen that show up in the workplace? What ideas do you have?
I think number one is memes. Like in a meeting, when you hit that emotion people are feeling but not quite expressed, it's in context, but that helps people release or empathize. Very good.
Nice, I like it. Yeah. What else?
Well, years ago, at Entrado, if y'all are familiar, so for our boss, it got elaborate. They were able to go in and knowing it was his birthday, they came in and we had a snow machine going, and it just randomly, like stuff randomly started going in his office. And he was a very funny guy anyway, bordering on whatever sometimes. But it would just, it snowballed. Like there was one little thing and then something else was out and something got delivered, and it was just all wacky. And it was really fun. It was nice. And in fact, they got it on video and it's lasted over the years.
Oh, nice. So never live that down. That's awesome. Okay, some fun pranks. What else? Where else have you seen little moments of comedic delight?
Our CEO is Welsh and he has quite an accent. And when we were back in the office, he used to start every all hands meeting with, "Good morning, Boulder." And so we all got used to Chris saying that. And then whenever someone else would facilitate, sometimes me, I would always kick it off with "Good morning, Boulder" in Chris James' accent. And it was just kind of a way to lighten the mood, and people would giggle and, you know, just set the tone for an all hands meeting, which sometimes can be dry sometimes, or you can make sure that it's fun.
Nice. I'm intimately familiar with that one. I should have started this. Good morning. I can't even go that low. Good morning, Boulder. Okay, great. So these are fantastic examples. And I hope what you're hearing is that there are some like big fun ones, but there's also some like tiny moments. Actually, Maddie, I'm going to pick on you for a minute. Maddie and I worked together, and at that same conference where I totally botched the jokes, I got to witness her doing a fantastic job introducing speakers, and Matt, I wish I could remember your examples, but she was telling me how she would kick off the introduction, and instead of keeping it formal and buttoned up and like very polished and professional, she had a little bit of fun with it. And my assumption would be, as a participant, I would probably feel more welcomed and ready to listen, and probably remember the content of the talk better after having been greeted that way. So there's the opportunity here is to insert little tiny moments of levity to help create some balance with the gravity. And the second skill, okay, first skill was what? Know your
Audience.
audience. Nice. Okay, second skill is to know your voice. So now starting to think about how you can contribute to that levity. I want to do an activity. Again, I'm going to ask you to come off mute and like shout some things out here. It's just chaotic. I want us to explore, the goal here is not to be funny. So don't worry about trying to be funny. I just want us to think about like exploring the realm of the ridiculousness. So we're just going to go on a journey here. I'm going to give you a prompt. It's going to be a task, a real world actual task, but I want you to tell me one ridiculous way of doing that task. So think fast. Whenever you have something, come off mute and just shout it out. The first task is, what is a ridiculous way to make toast?
With your toes.
Make toast with your toes. Okay, good. What is
A
a ridiculous
flamethrower.
way? A flamethrower. I was like ready to move on, and you just hit me with the flamethrower. That's fantastic. Most my toast usually looks like it was made with the flamethrower. What is a ridiculous way to brush your teeth?
Upside down.
Upside down. Okay, good. What is a ridiculous way to wash your car?
With a toothbrush.
With a toothbrush. While you're brushing your teeth, just do both at once. What is a ridiculous way to eat ice cream?
With fork.
Okay, you can do better than that. More
Ice
ridiculous. More ridiculous. What's an even more ridiculous way to eat ice cream?
Chopsticks.
But you guys are thinking literal. You're thinking about the tool. I want something like out of this world, the most zany, ridiculous thing ever.
By filling a pool with ice cream and jumping in it.
There we go. That's what I'm talking about.
How about skydiving? Eating ice cream
Yeah,
while
Ice cream
skydiving.
while skydiving? Okay, there we go. Now we're thinking big and wild and crazy. Okay, any others for ice cream? Skydiving in a giant pool of ice cream. What else?
Eating ice cream with your
The
toes.
sauna.
With your toes in the sauna, both at the same time. Wow, you weren't even trying to be funny, but it just was funny by default. Okay, now those were just daily life tasks. Now let's try it with some work related things, okay? Remember, crazy, ridiculous. What is a ridiculous way to introduce a meeting?
Starting with the outcome,
Starting with the outcome.
backwards meeting.
Oh, backwards meeting. That sounds that's interesting. We should unpack that a little bit. Okay, give me
Dressed as
another
a
one.
newscaster.
Like doing it as a newscaster?
Or like, yeah, as a newscaster, or maybe dressed as a president.
Oh, I like that. Dress as any president or like a specific president. No, actually, let's keep politics out. Sorry. Okay, how
I
about
think- What about
What's-
like as Oprah?
you get an agenda item and you get an agenda item, and yes, everybody look under your chairs.
Okay,
You
so
have
I've
a-
actually done that before. We
Ah.
use Oprah frequently.
Nice.
Wait, tell me about it. How did you do it? What happened?
So, well, right now, surveys are really popular. Everyone, that's the answer. Let's do a survey. And so I created memes. And so, it's you get a survey and you get a survey. And so that was the most recent one. That one happened yesterday.
Nice. I love it.
But
That's
Oprah
awesome.
gets lots of mileage in our team.
Yeah, lots of love for Oprah. Okay, that's great. Okay, let's do another one. That was just the first one. I had like a bunch of other prompts. What is a ridiculous way to close an email?
Hello.
Hello. Okay, that's good. Yeah, completely unexpected. What
May
else?
the
What's another
force
one?
be with you.
May the force be with you. I like it. I'm gonna steal that. Okay, what else? What else?
Moistly yours.
Okay, I gotta walk away from the computer. That was too much. Sorry. Well, millennial
Yep.
humor. Okay, that's good. Any others? Hashtag yes we Kanban. Kanban. Yeah. Okay. Nice. Wow, this is great. You guys are funny. These are really good. Okay. Okay, that was that activity. We can move on. But these are great examples of little tiny things you can do to balance the scales of heavy and fun. Okay, next one, creative thinking, exploring divergent thoughts and different ideas. So earlier I told you, the importance of knowing your audience and of learning your voice. So I want to share an experience that I had that helped to do these things. A different conference, was a co-host with, many of you probably know Leisha and Gargano. She's with, she's on the board with Agile Denver. And we had the pleasure of co-hosting one of the Safe Summits. And we, we started off by just going wild. How many different ideas can we think of? Maddie and I also co-hosted the summit, but this one was on stage, so it was a little bit different. we explored as many different like premises that we could think of. So like, let's just list everything. We spent a lot of time considering who was going to be in the room for that conference. Who are they? What do they do? What do they think about? What motivates them? And then we tested. It was like we were building this like a comedy product. We did some testing. We brought our team members in and we said, we're going to tell you some jokes. We're going to do some little bits. Tell us what you think. And if they had like a completely straight face by the end, we were like, that one is gone. We're not going to use that content. And we didn't just stop there. Once we found the things that worked, we took them and we refined them and we unpacked them and we went deeper. And something that we always tried to do was use the element of surprise. What's something unexpected? You guys just had a lot of great examples of like closing an email in a way that's totally unexpected. So for example, at this conference, we had a lot of smart people in the room. We had a lot of keynote speakers who were very intelligent, published books, right? Very smart people. So naturally, when Leisha and I were on stage, we did the complete opposite. We showed everybody how stupid we were. No, we just tried to show openness and like, we're not just here to say something really smart and analytical. We're here to have some fun and bring some lightheartedness to the event. So in the world of comedy, that's known as juxtaposition or contrast. How do you catch the audience off guard? I think it was Kevin Hart who did a bit about school bullies. And his whole thing was, my kids come home from school and the school flyer says, we're a bully-free school. And he was like, I hate that. Bullies made me who I am today, and I want my kids to be bullied. And naturally, that's not what you would expect a parent to say. So he's using the element of surprise. He's doing the unexpected, and that's the third skill. So the first skill, know your audience. Second skill, know your own voice. Third skill, use the element of surprise. So we're going to try that. We're going to do another improvisational activity here. And it's been really fun getting to know all of you in this meetup. I think it's time that we plan a vacation together. So we need two things. We need a location and we need an activity for us to do on this vacation. So I want you to start thinking of ideas because I want to hear your ideas so we can pick one. But plot twist, I want wrong answers only. I want you to tell me a terrible location and I want you to tell me a terrible activity for us to do. What ideas do you have? Go. Come off mute.
At home, shelter in place, vacation.
Wait, sorry. I should. Let's start with the location. So, what's your idea, Smita, for a location?
San Francisco.
The office.
Terrible. Wait. San Francisco. Okay, San Francisco. Terrible. The Office. Terrible place for location for a vacation. Where else?
Inside a volcano.
Inside a volcano. Okay, that's
Okay.
scary.
So if we're local to the Denver area, let's stay here and go to the Purina plant.
Ugh.
Julie, I think that takes the cake. We're gonna go
That
on
takes
a
the cake.
vacation. We're taking a vacation to the Purina plant, but now we need an activity to do while we're there. What are some terrible ideas that you have for an activity.
Short
Food
dog
taste.
food. QA dog food bits.
There you go.
QA, dog food. What else?
Bringing cats.
Bring a cat.
Yeah.
Taste
bring the-
testing.
Taste testing.
Clean the dog food vat with
Oh.
your teeth.
Okay. Let's see. Is there anything that we could do that is actually totally unrelated to the fact that we're at the Purina plant?
Sunbathe.
Okay, sunbathe. I like it. Sorry, I keep disappearing off the camera because it's too much. Any others?
How about some trapeze inside?
That is dangerous. Let's do it. Okay, so we're gonna go
How
on a
about-
vacation.
How
Sorry,
about
what?
how about having a vacation inside the volcano and doing a swimming activity, going for a swim.
I like it. Okay, so we're ditching the Purina plant. We're gonna go on a vacation inside of a volcano, and we are going to do a combination of trapeze, artistry, which I'm sure you're all very skilled at, and swimming. So make sure to pack a bathing suit. I was going to give you a couple of comedic techniques, but I feel like you already have used these two techniques. But I'm going to tell you what they are, and then you'll see why you already did these. Very simple and straightforward, but some things that you could try to apply. The first technique is just adding a layer of detail. That's an already very detailed location inside of a volcano. But we started off a little more broad, and as we were going through it, you just kind of naturally found that detail that made it funny. So detail is a technique. The other one, again, really simple, but exaggeration, the power of exaggeration. Maybe we could exaggerate this a bit. If we're taking a vacation inside a volcano and we're doing trapeze art, is there any way to make that any more dramatic?
Invite
Right.
all of your ex-partners.
Oh my God. I cannot wait to go on this vacation. It's going to be so good. Because it's just going to be wild. Okay, so we're going inside a volcano. We're doing a trapeze artistry, and all of our exes are coming with us. Totally ridiculous. Now, you might be thinking, what a grand waste of time. Why did we just plan this absolutely ridiculous vacation? Actually,
Yeah.
I'm going to use this. You're like, yeah, why did we do that, Sam? Why did you just waste 5 minutes? Because by telling us what you don't want to do and what you think is terrible, I now can start to make some assumptions about what you do actually want to do. Or if we had more time and we could dialogue a little bit about why some of these things are particularly terrible to you, then I understand you and your point of view and what you might want to do. A nice example of this, I have an upcoming meeting with the team to work on working agreements. I'm going to have them write some working agreements for the team. But I want to start off by asking them, what terrible ideas do you have for working agreements? And then from there, we could extrapolate. For example, they might say, working agreement number 1, you can text me day or night 24/7. Obviously, based on that response, I know that that person needs some boundaries because they're going to feel guilty if they're getting messages at 9 p.m. So we should talk about that. So a little bit of ridiculousness there, but hopefully you enjoy the activity and see where we could have taken it. All right, number 4. So we talked about knowing your audience, knowing your voice, and using the element of surprise, doing the unexpected. If I were to say, no, finish the sentence for me. It's funny because it's
Unexpected.
Inspiring, igniting.
True.
Wait, true. That's what I was going for. Sorry. I
Oh,
thought there was just one answer, but those are also true, unexpected and inspiring. But the response I was going for is it's funny because it's true. So this is the 4th thing I wanted to talk about, which is mining for truth, learning how to make observations. Somebody earlier in the icebreaker talked about how their favorite comedian was really good at pointing out things that we all do on a daily basis, but maybe we don't actually recognize in ourselves. And comedians are masters at this. They help us see things that we don't see, or they take those things and they frame them in a different light. And this is actually a really powerful skill that we've used in the process of problem solving. We had a problem solving workshop, and we had participants, they started off with a problem statement. We had them explore, unpack it a little bit. Let's do some root cause, try to understand what is causing the problem. But I asked all the participants to think of a metaphor to describe their problem. So I said, think of something totally unrelated. And I've said this several times during the meetup, like go crazy, go further, go outside where you start, the box that you started, go into the world of the ridiculous. Give me something totally unrelated to this problem. And what the participants came up with was amazing. It was so creative. They had all these different out of the box ideas. And when they started sharing and exchanging, like this problem is like this experience, it created an opportunity for them to then ask questions and start to understand each other's points of view. Humor, comedy is a form of expression, and giving people the opportunity to express themselves helps you to see their point of view. There was one of the responses, I said, tell me about your problem. What's a metaphor you would use? And she said, this experience is like trying to bail out a sinking yacht, a sinking ship with a paper cup. And I was like, oof, that sounds difficult. So let's talk about your paper cup. Like, what does that represent in this scenario? And maybe we should talk about why the ship is sinking in the first place. Like, where's the hole that we should go plug? So it gave participants some language that they could use to explore the problem, make it playful. Remember earlier we talked about balancing the gravity with the levity. And that particular workshop, often, people leave it having done a lot of hard work and having a lot of hard conversations. And there was this association with that workshop, and you're like, oh God, it's such a drag. But this experience of framing it around comedy and using metaphor to describe their problems made it fun and playful. So they were like, oh, we should do that again. That was great. So there were a lot of benefits to help with the problem solving, using comedy and humor to help solve problems. It also helped to sort of separate themselves emotionally from the problem they might be experiencing and use other language to describe it. Okay, so mind for truth, making observations. I've got another activity, and I want to choose an experience that is near universal. I have one in mind, unless somebody has another idea. I'm thinking imposter syndrome, which is something common that people experience as you're moving up in your career. You hit a moment where you're like, oh, I feel like I don't know what I'm doing, and everyone thinks that I'm an imposter because I do not deserve to be here. I don't know what I'm doing. And if anyone is willing to let me very briefly interview you about an experience you've had with imposter syndrome, I just want to ask you a couple of questions. You don't have to go into like drastic detail if it feels uncomfortable, but I'm curious to ask you about that experience. Is there anyone who'd be willing to volunteer for a short interview?
I will.
Julie, thanks. You know what? Let's give Julie a round of applause. Thanks for volunteering, Julie. Okay, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna mine for truth. Okay, so I just want to understand your experience with imposter syndrome. When you think about a time where you felt that imposter syndrome, what was an emotion that you felt really strongly?
Like I didn't belong. Like I was surrounded by all these really smart people, and I did not stack up to the same level that they did.
What was an opinion that you had about the situation you felt very strongly about?
But fear would probably be the, fear that you would be found out, fear that they would find out that I was not worthy to be there. Even though I rationally knew that they had hired me for my skills, I knew what I brought to the table, but as I learned more about all of the people in my company, I realized, holy cow, these people are brilliant, and so I don't see myself in the same light.
Mm. What is something about that moment that just made you cringe?
Thinking about things that I may have said wrong or that did not have the right context. Because I was new, I was learning, I was onboarding, I didn't have the entire map before me. So learning is a vulnerable situation.
Okay. 2 more questions. You're doing great.
Need a progress bar.
Yeah, yeah. What is I could draw you one. It's like, no. What was something that turned out to be the opposite of what you expected?
That my boss's silence was not that he didn't like my product. It was that he thought I did not need guidance.
And through all of that, but still thinking about imposter syndrome, what is something that sparked delight?
Pushing past it and maybe finding those little glimmers of acceptance or regard within my peer group.
Nice. Okay. Thank you again for letting me ask you those questions. So I'm gonna read back some of the responses. And I want everybody to think, as you're hearing the responses, if you can think of an example of something in life totally unrelated, but that connects to one or several of these responses. Doesn't have to be true for all of them, but just something that connects. So again, totally unrelated to imposter syndrome, what is a different experience you've had in life that connects to one of these things? So we heard feelings of not belonging, feeling like you didn't stack up, surrounded by people who are so smart, feeling a fear that you would be found out, thinking about things, overthinking, maybe I said this wrong, did this wrong. The silence of another person not signaling that they were it wasn't a disapproval, it was a sign of confidence. And then lastly, the delight in pushing through that and finding little glimmers of acceptance. Can you think of something in life that is similar or would create those similar?
Karaoke.
Oh my gosh, that is brilliant. Karaoke.
Terrifying.
That's so good. Like a fear of being found out that I'm not actually a Grammy award-winning singer. Surprise, surprise. Okay. Wow, that's good. Maddie.
Competing in a jujitsu tournament as a white belt, only having trained for 6 months. I should not have been there. Was my thought.
Did you have like glimmers of acceptance though throughout the competition?
Yeah, I got a bronze medal. 3rd place.
What? There you go.
There was only 3 of us.
There
but-
was only 3 of you. Okay, that's what I was assuming. It's okay. You
But
still got your medal.
that medal means the world to me.
Yes, yes. That's good. That's so good. Smita.
Learning Jira over a weekend and going to a new job, finding that I know more than them to figure out the board and improve the flow from the first week.
Sounds like that's something where it turned out differently than you expected. You
Absolutely.
were expecting to learn, but you realized, oh, I actually already
Better
know
than
what
yeah.
Nice. Yeah, yeah. Nice. Okay, so I think what we just demonstrated is the experience I described earlier, where when you're able to create connections between 2 things that are completely unrelated, it helps us to understand somebody's point of view from your own experience. What ended up happening in that problem-solving workshop is you'd think like, oh, why are we wasting all this time talking about sinking ships and jujitsu and all this nonsense? But again, remember I described earlier the tense moment of being in that presentation. I'm like, oh, I feel so tense. But when I can get myself to like step out of the situation and remain calm, then we can get to better results. And I think we experienced that in that workshop as well. So I hope you enjoyed that example of mining for truth. I guess the last thing I would say on that is, I don't know who here, how many folks are Scrum Masters, Agile coaches, but in that world, in the world of what I do, I think there's so much value in being able to make those types of observations, being able to connect the dots and understand what is the primary emotion here, what are the really strongly held opinions that people are latching onto. And so it's a great skill to have even outside of humor. Just practicing it helps in other ways. I'll pause here because I want to tell you about a book, a resource that is great in exploring this world of humor and comedy at work. A lot of this content is borrowed from this. It's Humor Seriously. I'll hold it up so you can see it. Take a screenshot if you want to buy the book. Why Humor is a Secret Weapon in Business and Life. Jennifer Acker and Naomi Bagdonas. These two ladies are Stanford professors, so I think they know what they're talking about. Unlike me, I'm just making this up as I go. So highly recommend you read that. They go into much more detail about making observations and how to use comedy at work. All right, last section here. So we've done know your audience, know your voice, use the element of surprise, mine for truth. Now I want to hit the last thing, which is know what is appropriate. So we explored this idea of appropriateness a little bit. Somebody earlier said one of the things that makes me uncomfortable about using humor at work is I don't want to say anything that's inappropriate. Don't want to get in trouble. I don't want to offend anybody. Okay, this is hard. I was preparing for this talk and I thought maybe I will make a list of all of the things that are inappropriate that you shouldn't talk about at all in humor, right? So we should not talk about race. You should not talk about gender. You should not talk about sexuality. You should not talk about the bedroom. You should not talk about the bathroom. You should not talk about nationality. You should not punch up. You should not punch down. You should not make fun of anybody's roles. You should not make fun of where anybody's from. You should not make fun of anybody's body or their hair color or anything about that. And the list would just, it would be so long. And the truth is, this is hard. The truth is, there are some things on that list that I've witnessed being used appropriately, which is interesting. So I think it's impossible to say this is appropriate, that is not appropriate. There's so much context that matters. Knowing your audience, knowing your own voice. If you were to deliver something, are people going to understand your sense of humor and what you're getting at? We just talked about mining for truth. Is the truth behind your humor something that is hurtful? When we think about appropriateness, we often think about like, let's not bring the bedroom into the office. That is inappropriate and they should stay separate. The appropriateness goes way beyond that. If you're punching down or poking fun at someone's work when they've maybe worked really hard on something and the context isn't right, then that can be really inappropriate. So again, the manifesto from earlier, appropriateness over laughter, and the key is to know your audience, know your own voice, and to know what's appropriate. I want to pause and see if you have some examples. I want to ask if you can think of a time where a leader in your organization has used humor appropriately. Can you think of a presentation or a communication, an interaction, something where we already heard some great examples earlier, where a leader in your organization has used humor in an appropriate way? What examples can you share?
I have one. Our CEO, we were in a company meeting. He was introducing a product, doing a little dangerous live coding, and he directed to a website that rickrolled the entire company at one time.
That's not on purpose, right? It was a total
No,
accident.
he planned to rickroll the entire company.
Oh, that is funny. That is really funny. Okay, nice. Totally appropriate, right? What else?
Can I share something?
Yes, yeah, let's
You're
hear.
asking for inappropriate from
Appropriate. Any appropriate examples? Appropriate use of humor.
Oh, I see. I used appropriate humor when one of a very senior executive said colorful language in a funny way. I didn't think it was good. I said, the question was, what do you say when you spill coffee on the laptop? I would say, it's half and half. Half on the laptop, half on my lap.
That's good. That's good. Nice. Very appropriate, right? I'm sure nobody's feelings were hurt by that. I'll give you one. We had, this was not planned, but once our, again, CEO, he's getting a lot of shout outs in this meeting, was giving a presentation, and he seemed a little confused as he was clicking through the slides, but he would turn, he would look, and then he would talk about that slide, and then he would turn and he'd look and he'd talk about the next slide. And then he gets a couple slides in and he's like, I don't know what this presentation is. I've never seen these slides. I'm kind of making this up. And his vulnerability and honesty was hilarious. Of course, it felt appropriate. And the person who was managing the presentations had exited the room. They came back in a few minutes later and I was like, what? This is not the right, you're in the wrong spot. So, but his willingness to just admit, boom, right on the spot, I have no idea what's going on. It resonated. People thought it was great. Do you have any examples? And don't need to name names. We don't need to get into the specifics, but I'm curious if you can tell me about an example of inappropriate humor and what about it made it inappropriate. Was it a violation of them not knowing their audience, not understanding their own sense of humor, their own voice? Was the truth that they were pulling on a little too true, like too soon? Can you think of an example of an inappropriate use of humor that you can share?
I witnessed Scrum Master. It was a male, and there were 2 females on the team who were pregnant, and he would comment about them being pregnant, but in a way that was really awkward and uncomfortable for him to be saying, or really anyone to be saying. So that just always was just like kind of like a cringy, like instant cringe. And I can't remember exactly what he said, but it's something around them being pregnant in their appearance.
So can I ask, if you said there were 2 people who were pregnant, and I'm not about to make pregnant jokes, so relax. Was if like the other person who was pregnant had made a comment, or if someone who had had a kid before had made some like pregnancy related thing, would it have felt different?
I don't think so. I think it was based
Oh.
on the person who was delivering the message. Like always is kind of off in his delivery, thinks he's being funny, but is never funny.
So if the person delivering was a different person, was a pregnant person or someone who had been pregnant before, would that context have changed?
Yes.
Or you're like, no, it's yes. Oh, okay.
Could have.
Okay.
I witnessed something that was meant to be light, but it turned out to be very heavy. Somebody was saying an acronym which I did not understand, and I asked FFF. I did not understand. So, oh, this is it. And I was still did not understand. And the other person said, that person needs to wash her mouth. And that was, said funny, but the person who said, who heard that said, I did got it washed because when I was born, I said bloody. So you see, things went into deeper negative level. What it meant was not that heavy.
Got it. So the attempt did not, the attempt to make the joke did not land. People did not find it funny. Yeah. Okay, so a couple of thoughts on how to handle that scenario. If it's somebody else, then I don't know if there's anything we can do about it. If you find yourself, you're like, oh, I think I just crossed into the world of inappropriate. Hopefully you can feel it and you can recognize it. Maddie, are you raising your hand to say something?
Yeah, I had a good example, but finish what you're saying.
Oh, hopefully you recognize when that has happened. Maybe not. Maybe someone comes to you and says, hey, that thing that you said was, I didn't find it funny. It was offensive. Appropriateness is in the eye of the beholder. So it's not on them to understand your humor. It's your job to acknowledge, to try seek to understand, to acknowledge, and to apologize that, you know, the joke that I made was inappropriate. I shouldn't have made it, and I'm sorry for that. And remember earlier we talked about the foundation of trust and psychological safety. So when that's broken through inappropriate humor, it's important to try and repair that. Maddie, what was your example?
I was facilitating the hackathon demo for about 100 people, and a group had come together around a diversity and inclusion item, and the title of their presentation was systematic racism, but I said they're presenting on systemic racism. And everyone was like, I just went on, like, I didn't even know I said it. So it wasn't on purpose, but then I had people ping me afterwards and they were like, you messed up. So maybe not the same, but I think there's something in there, because afterwards I addressed the situation. So if you do say something inappropriate, as an example, I think you can make levity of your mistakes and acknowledge them, and like it could be a little self-deprecating, but at least raise attention to it. So related, not related.
No, it is related. No, I think it's a great example because you talk the process of recovering
Right.
was self-deprecating and not, you weren't like, oh, let me try to explain my humor to them so they get it. You were like, hey, I messed up, like that's on me. And generally, again, like appropriateness over laughter,
Right.
people are grateful that you recognize that.
Yeah,
think,
I'm sorry.
yeah, go ahead.
I was
go ahead.
thinking that situation could be improved if the other person said, oh, that's what I do when I feel like saying this. I just pretend I have mouthwash in my mouth.
Right.
Like
Yeah. Listen, I have a filter that I have to turn on sometimes. So and I know my voice, and I know that a lot of the things that I find funny that, from, Instagram and stuff that I might share with close friends, I cannot bring into the workplace. So it's okay to use a filter and, understand that appropriateness is relative. That sounds scientific, doesn't it? It's a relativity theorem for appropriateness of humor. Okay. Have we missed anything? I think that was everything. So if we, here's our last little technique for you. It's callback. This can be useful in any situation. Is comedy callback is when you refer to something from earlier. So I'm gonna call back to that first story that I told. If you were late and missed the intro, then you got to avoid the pain, but everyone else, here's the connection. So we hit 5 skills. There was knowing your audience, knowing your voice, element of surprise, mind for truth, and know what's appropriate. And in that scenario where I was pranking the senior business leader, I'm sorry, all I can see is Maddie's dog's nose like in the camera. It's totally fine. All 5 of those things were in place. So I knew the audience, the group of people in that meeting. We had worked together. I had supported them. We had trust, right? So safe space. I knew my own voice. I knew that the joke would land because they know that I can be silly and unpredictable. And so it worked. The element of surprise. The meeting was serious business, right? We were making decisions about the future of our organization, and there was tension and disagreement. The last place that you would expect someone to improvise a little mini prank. Mind for truth. I didn't have to mind for truth because I had the business leader do it for me. he noticed something that didn't meet our expectations. That's the example of incongruity, where he said, we say we do one thing, but we're doing something else. So he gave me the truth and I just took it and exposed it. And then knowing what's appropriate. Again, knowing the audience and knowing that truth and sharing, I mean, it was already out there. It was not a painful or harmful thing. And that little prank did not completely disrupt the entire meeting. I knew that it was going to help us break through the tension and move forward. So those are my 5 skills that I would say you can use to help bring levity into the workplace. That's all I've got. I'm totally happy to hang out and see if anyone has any questions and wants to explore any particular areas further. But that's all that I've got for the meetup. So thanks for having me.
Thank you, Sam.
Thanks, Sam.
Thanks, Sam.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Sam.
Thank you.
I've got
Thank
a
you,
page full
Sam.
of notes.
Thank you.
What'd you say, Stella?
I wanted to
I got
share.
1 page full of notes.
You have a page full of notes? Oh, that's
Yeah.
awesome. Everyone, I have to give Stella a shout out. My favorite comedian is Eliza Schlesinger, which my breakout group knows this. And Stella and I had a chance to go see Eliza on stage in Denver live. So that was pretty cool. Yeah. Nice.
I have tickets for Brian Regan in November.
That'll be fun. That'll be awesome.
Mhm.
Love it. Cool. All right. I'm just hanging out if anybody has any questions.
Do you want me to stop the recording?
Sure. Yeah. Or do you typically record the Q&A or?
It's up to you guys. What's your comfort level with me keeping it recording? I can also ask people to edit it out. I'll keep it going.
Okay, cool. Yeah, are there any questions? Any areas you'd be interested in exploring further?
How did you learn all these tricks? Did you go for a training on improv?
Nope. I just made them all up. No. So this book was actually really helpful. And then took a lot of ideas from this book and started practicing them at work in things like the problem solving. And honestly, one of my favorite things to do is find little moments to do something totally unexpected. I'll give you an example. I just moved recently to Hawaii. And the first thing that people always say every time I join a meeting, they're like, oh, how's Hawaii? Is it so amazing? Are you loving living in paradise? And the expectation would be that I say, yes, I love it here. It's beautiful and wonderful. So of course I hit them with the opposite. I'm like, it sucks. And the sun is too bright and the beach is too sandy. It's terrible. And that usually leads to, then we're laughing together and we're having a good time. So, finding ways to just do the unexpected in little tiny moments is a way to make work more fun.
Well, that's great. I want to share something. In Denver, Colorado, there is a headquarters for Toastmasters International.
Oh, yeah.
They have 12 pathways, and it is one of the best cheap leadership building platform in my experience. If I had not gone to Toastmasters, I don't think I would have started Agile training. I'm a trainer.
Okay.
And one of the pathways they have is engaging humor. You can just Google it and find the curriculum. They give you step-by-step trainings, but it's up to you. It's on you how farther you want to go, right? So
nice.
It's really good. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm going to check that out, especially if it's available online for free.
It is everything online. I spend a lot of time during the COVID time in staycation. That was my fun thing.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah.
I'm going to check that out.
You will definitely improve. You're a great speaker, but when you go there, even I improve a lot. I have deteriorated my speaking skills because I'm not going now. Yeah.
No,
I have
that's
a
awesome.
question.
Yeah, yeah.
I love today's format, and Sam, you mentioned you're a Scrum Master as well as a team coach. Is this how you would normally coach a team? This kind of format?
Do you mean the way that we ran the meetup?
Interacts and you
Interactive?
throw prompts and interview.
Yeah. I like to, one of my worst enemies is 45-minute presentations. Just listening to slides over and over. I'm like, oh. So I don't, oh my God, the light just changed on me. So I don't like to subject other people to that. So yeah, whenever we're doing team meetings, like collaborating on things or whatever, training or enablement, whatever the topic is, I like to mix in questions, activities, quiz, something to keep it spicy.
Yeah. I want to say just time flies. When I looked at the meetup event, I went, okay, 6 to 7:30. That's long, but I didn't realize it's already 7:30. So you made
Oh,
it so
good.
fun.
Time flies when you're having fun. Nice. Yeah. I was telling Sherry before, the challenge with improv is you don't know what you're gonna get. So my worst fear, I was like, what if nobody says anything or we don't get good ideas? Boy, was I wrong. Everybody was like super creative and really interesting thoughts. So
Yeah.
that was awesome.
Yep.
Nice. Thanks, Stella.
I was wondering if you had any thoughts on hiring for a sense of humor and like what that looks like in an interview.
Hiring for humor. Wow. You mean like trying to gauge someone's sense of humor when you're interviewing them?
Yeah, we're talking about how this is a positive skill. If I were to try and identify this in others during interviews, what would I look for?
That is such a brilliant question that I don't have an answer to. I mean, what could we do? Like ask someone who's interviewing to, like, you get 5 minutes to do a stand-up routine. I'm just kidding. That'd be terrible. I don't know. Sherry, what do you think?
So comedy oftentimes is storytelling. And so if you could ask an open-ended question and they can present it in a humorous way, that would be a good way to engage and create like it's free form for them.
Alex, have you ever hired someone who you felt like had a good sense of humor?
Yeah, I guess it's like one of those things, like I don't feel like I can say no to someone if they don't have a sense of humor, but I also want to make sure they can talk and communicate well and convey their points. And
yeah.
So just looking for some, other opinions there.
I mean, the first place my mind went is sort of the same way that I would treat appropriateness. It's like when you know if it's appropriate or not, and when you meet someone, kind of like whether or not they have a sense of humor, it's like when you know, because we also all have different senses of humor, and I think trying to, I'll tell you what I wouldn't do is try to ask someone to just be funny. I think the intent of this entire meetup is like, how do you adopt practices of levity and humor, but that doesn't necessarily mean you can just like be funny on the spot. And I think even professional comedians, I'm sure there's many people who are naturally funny, but even a lot of stand-up comics, the thing that you see them do on stage is a performance. They've like written and they've rehearsed and they've refined it and they've figured out how to make it really funny. So it's not necessarily something that just happens on the spot. So I don't know. I think if I was interviewing somebody, I'm thinking about past interviews. I feel like just through the interaction, you sort of get a sense for their intellect and whether or not they can, honestly, if they give me like really dry, boring answers the entire interview, then I'm thinking, they don't seem to have much of a sense of humor. But if they can find ways to pepper it in, then I think that goes a long way. I don't know if that's a helpful answer to your question. just like a terrible interview, but you really made me think there.
Yeah, I was thinking if it's a good skill I want to encourage my staff to have, what do I hire for?
Yeah.
So, cool. Well, thank you for the thoughts.
Yeah, thank you. I don't know, has anybody else interviewed someone and thought like, oh wow, this person's really funny. What's that? How do you know?
I know I've been in panel interview situations where I was interviewing someone, and the way that they kind of did their crowd work, being able to kind of like connect with each person around the table on the panel, that's a soft skill that like that's really difficult to teach.
Mm-hmm. Crowd work, I like that. Cool. Anything else? There's only a couple of us here. If anyone's too nervous to ask questions in the big group. All right. Well, Sherry, thanks for inviting me to come to this meetup. I had a great time. I think I learned just as much from the group than I had to share.
I love that. That's amazing. That's what we want. It's with our community here. So
Nice.
thank you so much for being brave enough with all the changes going on and moving and all of that stuff. And, you know, me reaching out to you after you and Maddie did a really amazing LinkedIn discussion that was pretty cool, I think, on retrospectives. And so when you mentioned humor, I was like, I would like some humor, please.
Nice. Good. I'm glad
Yeah.
you enjoyed it.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, guys. I'm going to end the recording.